Garrett Stone guided his cargo transport through the dimmed corridors of Frontier Station, his shoulders aching from 14 straight hours of repair work. The station's ancient cooling systems had flooded 3 levels with condensation, turning the lower docking bays into something resembling a mechanical rainstorm. At 39 years old, his body kept a detailed record of every injury from his military service. His left leg protested with each step on the brake pedal. His back sent sharp reminders that crawling through maintenance shafts was a young man's game. He should have been home 2 hours ago. Riley was probably staging a dramatic protest with Owen, his younger brother, who had moved in after Garrett's wife passed away 4 years ago. Owen meant well, but his cooking skills hovered somewhere between questionable and potentially hazardous. Riley had once described his pasta as weaponized, and Garrett couldn't entirely disagree. The headlights cut through sheets of falling water as he took the shortcut through the old passenger terminal. Nobody used this section anymore, not since the new transit hub opened on the station's north side. The benches sat empty, the departure boards frozen on schedules from years past, and the whole area carried the melancholy air of a place the universe had forgotten. That's when he saw her. A figure sat hunched on one of the benches, soaked completely through, trembling in the artificial downpour. Even from a distance, Garrett could see her skin shimmering with an otherworldly quality, catching the light in ways that human skin never could. She was Valente, one of the empathic species from the distant nebula colonies. He'd served alongside one during the frontier conflicts, had seen firsthand how their ability to read emotions made them exceptional mediators and terrible poker players. But Valente didn't end up alone on forgotten space stations. They were known for their close-knit family structures, their wealth, and their tendency to avoid human-dominated spaces. Something was very wrong. Garrett hit the brakes harder than intended, sending tools rattling in the cargo bed. The woman's head lifted at the sound, and he saw the dark band wrapped across where her eyes should be. Medical grade, blocking completely. She was blind. His first instinct was to keep moving. He was tired, late, and getting involved in other people's disasters had never worked out well for him. His discharge papers and the aftermath of his wife's death were proof enough of that. But something about the way she sat there, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, hair plastered to her face like silver rain, stopped him cold. She looked the way Riley had looked at her mother's funeral, too young to understand why the world could be so cruel, too old to be shielded from the pain. Garrett climbed out of the transport, approaching slowly with his hands visible. The Valente weren't violent by nature, but a frightened person was unpredictable regardless of species. "Hey there," he called gently. "Are you all right?" Her head snapped toward his voice, body tensing. "Please, I'm just waiting for my shuttle. Please leave me alone." "Ma'am, no shuttles run through this terminal anymore. Haven't for about 6 years." He took another careful step forward. "You can't stay here. The temperature drops another 20 degrees when night cycle hits." He said someone would come. Her voice cracked, raw from crying. "He promised someone would come for me." Fresh sobs broke from her chest, the kind that came from somewhere so deep and broken that Garrett felt his own throat tighten. This wasn't someone who'd missed a connection. This was someone whose whole world had shattered. He crouched a few feet away, making himself smaller, less threatening. "I don't know what happened, but I can see you're in trouble. My name's Garrett Stone. I live here on the station with my daughter and brother. I can take you somewhere safe. Medical center, security, wherever you need. But you absolutely cannot stay here. I don't have anywhere to go. The words came out broken. I don't have anything. Then come with me, just to get warm and dry. My daughter's waiting at home. She's 10, thinks she knows everything, and makes terrible hot chocolate that she's extremely proud of. I promise, on her terrible hot chocolate, I only want to help. The silence stretched long enough that Garrett wondered if she'd refuse. He could see her weighing options, calculating risks, trying to determine if he was genuine or just a different kind of threat. He understood that calculation. He'd made it himself more times than he could count. Finally, she nodded, still trembling. Garrett helped her stand, feeling how unsteady she was, how her fingers sparked with tiny points of bioluminescence as she gripped his arm. Valente stress response, he remembered. They literally sparkled when overwhelmed. He retrieved her small travel case, surprisingly light, and guided her to the transport. Once she was settled in the passenger seat, he cranked the heat to maximum and draped his work jacket around her shoulders. It smelled like machine oil and solder, but it was warm. She pulled it close, still crying quietly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Garrett's throat felt tight. "What's your name?" "Taliya," she said after a moment. "Taliya Venn. I'm taking you to my place so you can get warm and figure things out. Okay?" She nodded, unable to speak. As Garrett pulled back onto the transit path, one question burned in his mind. Who had left this woman here to die? The apartment on level 32 was small but organized. A necessity when living with a 10-year-old who treated every surface as potential storage space. Garrett helped Taliya through the door to find Owen sprawled on the couch, watching some gravity ball tournament with intense concentration. "Garrett, finally, Riley threatened to put hot sauce in my—" Owen stopped mid-sentence, eyes going wide as he took in Taliya's shimmering skin. The medical band, the way she trembled despite the jacket. What happened? Bound her at the old terminal. She needs help. Garrett kept his voice steady, the same tone he'd used for green soldiers in combat. Can you grab towels and see if there's anything that might fit her? Owen's expression shifted to understanding. Some of Garrett's late wife's clothes were still packed away in storage, things he couldn't quite bring himself to donate. Yeah, of course. 2 minutes. Garrett guided Taliya to the couch. You're safe now. You're inside, you're warm, and nobody's going to hurt you here. Taliya's hands clutched the jacket, leaving faint sparkle trails on the fabric. Your daughter. You said you have a daughter? Riley. She's probably in her room pretending to do homework while actually reading adventure novels. Dad. A door slammed with explosive force. Dad, you're 2 hours late and Uncle Owen ate my protein bars, and I specifically told him. Riley froze in the doorway, her face cycling through confusion, curiosity, and wonder. Oh wow, you're Valente. We learned about you in school. Your skin is doing the sparkle thing. Riley, Garrett warned, manners. Sorry. Riley didn't look sorry. She walked closer, studying Taliya with unfiltered intensity. Why are you all wet? Why are you wearing that thing? Are you hurt? Riley, enough questions. I'm just curious. You always say curiosity is important. Taliya's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. It's all right. I'm wet because the station is malfunctioning. I'm wearing this band because I'm blind. And yes, I'm hurt, but not in a way bandages can fix. Riley's expression shifted to something Garrett recognized. The look she got, when encountering injustice she wanted to fix.
Someone abandoned you?
That's villain behavior. That's like something bad guys do in Chapter 3.
Yes, Taliya said, quietly.
Rather villainous, isn't it?
Well, Riley said, crossing her arms with decisiveness
that reminded Garrett painfully of his wife. You're obviously staying here tonight, because Dad always helps people. And you look like you could use Uncle Owen's hot chocolate. He makes it wrong, but it's still warm.
I heard that, Owen called from down the hall.
You were supposed to, Riley called back. She turned to Taliya, voice softening. I'm Riley Stone. If you need anything, ask me. I know where everything is, including Dad's secret snack drawer. And I'm really good at describing things. My friend Thomas can't hear well, so I already know how to help people with different senses. Communication is about adaptation.
Taliya's hand reached out, finding Riley's arm with surprising accuracy.
Thank you, Riley. That's very kind. I know, Riley said, matter-of-factly. Kindness is a skill. You practice it like anything else. Mom used to say the universe gives you opportunities to be good, and you have to recognize them. I think you might be one of those opportunities. Something in Taliya's posture shifted, tension loosening slightly. Owen returned with towels and dry clothes, soft gray pants, and a cream sweater that had been Garrett's wife's favorite. He led Taliya to the bathroom, carefully describing the layout, controls, where everything was located. Take as much time as you need, he said. The water system's been fixed, so you don't have to worry about it cutting out. Thank you, Taliya managed, voice thick. I don't know how to. You don't have to thank me. Just get warm. 30 minutes later, Taliya emerged, hair damp but no longer dripping, wearing clothes that hung slightly loose on her frame. The cream sweater was particularly affecting. Garrett remembered his wife wearing it on their last anniversary, curled up with a book, laughing at something Riley had said. Owen brought Taliya hot chocolate made with milk this time after Riley's intervention. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Garrett said gently, Taliya, you don't have to tell us anything you're not ready to share. But if you want to talk, we're listening. Taliya's hands wrapped around the mug, absorbing its warmth. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but every word landed like a stone in still water. His name was Joran Thrace. We were engaged to be married. Taliya's hands trembled around the warm mug as she sat on the worn couch in Garrett's small living room. Riley had settled on the floor nearby, watching with quiet intensity, while Owen leaned against the kitchen counter. Garrett sat in the chair across from her, giving her space but staying close enough that she could feel his presence. Joran and I met 2 years ago, at a diplomatic conference on Centauri Prime, Taliya began, her voice soft but steady. He was a human trade negotiator, charming, ambitious, full of stories about the frontier colonies. I was there representing my family's interests in the nebula sector. The Valente don't usually pursue relationships outside our species, but Joran was different. He made me feel like I could be part of something bigger than my sheltered world. She paused, taking a shaky breath. Riley shifted closer, not quite touching, but offering silent support. 6 months ago, I started losing my sight. It's a rare condition among my people, a genetic disorder that shuts down our electromagnetic perception. For humans, it would be like going blind. For Valente, it's worse. We don't just see with our eyes. We feel the world through energy signatures, emotional frequencies, the electromagnetic spectrum. Losing that is like losing multiple senses at once. Garrett's jaw tightened. He'd seen soldiers lose limbs, watched friends adapt to injuries that changed everything about how they moved through the world. But he couldn't imagine losing the fundamental way you perceived reality. My family wanted me to come home for treatment, but Joran convinced me to stay with him. He said we'd face it together, that love meant not running when things got difficult. Taliya's laugh was bitter, sharp as broken glass. He proposed 3 months ago. We were planning a wedding that would unite human and Valente cultures, something unprecedented. My family was skeptical, but I was so sure he loved me. What happened? Riley asked quietly. 2 weeks ago, Joran said we needed to travel to Frontier Station for business meetings. He'd secured a major contract here, something that would establish his career. I couldn't perceive much anymore by then. The medical band blocks what little electromagnetic sense I have left to prevent painful overstimulation. I was completely dependent on him. Her voice cracked. We arrived 3 days ago. He brought me to that terminal, told me to wait on the bench while he handled some urgent business. Said someone would come to escort me to our hotel within the hour. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. No one came. Taliya continued. I waited for hours. When I tried to call him, his communication device was disconnected. I asked passing travelers for help, but most people avoid Valente. We make them uncomfortable. Our empathic abilities, our appearance, the way we're different. By the time I realized he'd abandoned me, the terminal had emptied. The atmospheric malfunction started, and I just sat there, not knowing what else to do. That absolute piece of garbage, Riley said with surprising vehemence. That's not just villain behavior. That's like supervillain behavior. That's like the worst kind of person. Riley, Garrett said, but his tone lacked real reprimand. He was thinking similar thoughts, just with more creative language. What about your family? Owen asked gently. Can we contact them for you? Taliya's shoulders sagged. I can't. When I chose to stay with Joran against their wishes, when I insisted on this relationship despite their concerns, I damaged those relationships badly. My father said if I was so certain about choosing a human over my own people, I should be prepared to live with that choice. Reaching out now, after they were proven right, after I've been abandoned and left helpless, she couldn't finish the sentence. Garrett understood pride, understood the weight of admitting you'd made a catastrophic mistake. He'd carried similar burdens after his military discharge, after failing to save his wife when the station hull breached, after every moment he'd chosen work over being present for Riley. You can stay here, he said firmly, as long as you need. Taliya's head turned toward his voice, surprise evident even behind the medical band. I can't impose on you. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know someone hurt you badly. I know you need help. I know my daughter would stage a rebellion if I suggested otherwise. He glanced at Riley, who nodded emphatically. We've got a spare room. It's small, mostly storage right now, but Owen and I can clear it out tonight. You stay until you figure out your next move. Why would you do this for a stranger? Garrett was quiet for a moment, remembering his wife's voice, her insistence that the universe tested you with opportunities to be good. Because someone should have done it earlier. Because leaving you in that terminal was unconscionable. Because I've got the space and the capability to help. And that means I have the responsibility to do it. Taliya's bioluminescent particles flickered across her skin, in patterns Garrett was learning to recognize. Gratitude mixed with overwhelming emotion. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Riley interjected. Say yes, and then tomorrow we'll figure out breakfast, and I'll show you how our apartment is laid out, so you can move around safely. I've been researching Valente culture on my tablet, and apparently you can sense emotional frequencies, even without your electromagnetic perception, right?
So you can probably already tell we're being genuine.
A real smile crossed Taliya's face, the first since Garrett had found her.
I can sense that, yes.
Your family's emotional signatures are remarkably warm. It's like standing near a fire after being cold for too long.
That's the nicest thing anyone said about us in months,
Owen said, grinning. Usually people describe us as chaotic.
Chaotic and warm aren't mutually exclusive, Taliya replied.
Over the next 2 weeks,
a routine developed.
Garrett showed Taliya how to navigate the apartment, describing distances and obstacles with the precision of someone who'd done risk assessments for combat zones.
Riley appointed herself as Taliya's primary guide, narrating everything from the morning news to the view from their tiny window overlooking the station's industrial sector.
Owen, surprisingly, became Taliya's cooking instructor.
She'd never prepared food before, having grown up wealthy enough that such tasks were handled by others.
But she insisted on learning, on being useful, on contributing to the household that had taken her in. The key to not poisoning everyone, Owen explained as they stood side by side at the small kitchen counter, is understanding that cooking is just chemistry with delicious results, or occasionally disastrous results. It's really a spectrum.
Taliya laughed, her hands carefully measuring ingredients he'd described.
You make it sound like experimentation. Because it is. That's the fun part. Well, that and eating the results. Mostly eating the results. Garrett watched from the doorway as Taliya's confidence grew, as she learned to move through their space with increasing independence. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted from distress to something calmer, more content. She smiled more often.
The rigid tension in her shoulders had eased.
He'd also noticed his own reactions to her presence. The way his day felt incomplete until he came home and heard her voice. The warmth that spread through his chest when she laughed at Riley's dramatic storytelling. The protective instinct that flared whenever he thought about Joran Thrace and what he'd done. It was more than protective instinct, if he was honest with himself. It was attraction, connection, something deeper than he'd felt since his wife passed. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. One evening, after Riley had gone to bed and Owen had retreated to his room, Garrett found Taliya sitting by the window, her fingers tracing patterns on the glass.
"Can't sleep?" he asked softly.
"I was sensing the station's emotional landscape," she said. "Even through the walls, I can feel thousands of people living their lives. Happiness, frustration, loneliness, love.
It's like a symphony of feeling."
Garrett sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "What do you feel from me?" Taliya was quiet for a moment. Grief, old and deep, like a scar that's healed but never quite disappeared. Worry, constant and protective, mostly directed toward Riley. Exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying responsibilities alone for too long. She paused. "And something else. Something newer, uncertain. It feels like dawn, like the moment before sunrise, when everything is possible." His breath caught. "Taliya, I feel it too," she said quietly. "I've been trying not to. Trying to convince myself it's just gratitude. Just the comfort of being cared for after being abandoned."
"But it's more than that, isn't it?"
Garrett's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. Her skin was cool, smooth, sparking with soft light, where they touched. "I haven't felt this way since my wife died. I didn't think I could again.
And the timing is terrible.
You're vulnerable. You're staying in my home. I don't want to take advantage." "You're not." Taliya turned toward him, her free hand reaching up to touch his face with gentle precision, mapping his features with her fingertips. "I can sense your intentions, Garrett. There's no manipulation here, no ulterior motive.
Just honest feeling, genuine care. That's so rare. Joran's emotions were always layered with calculation, with what he could gain. Yours are straightforward, uncomplicated. You care because caring is who you are. I don't want to rush this. I don't want to mess this up. Then we won't rush. We'll take whatever time we need. Her smile was soft, hopeful, but we can acknowledge what's growing between us. We can let it exist. Garrett leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against hers, a gesture of intimacy that didn't require sight.
I'd like that. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, feeling the station breathe around them, while something new and fragile and precious grew in the space between their hearts. The station authorities arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Garrett had found Taliya. 2 officials in crisp uniforms stood at his door, their expressions professionally neutral, but their body language suggesting this was an unpleasant duty. Garrett Stone, the taller one, asked, "That's me. We need to speak with you about the Valente woman you've been harboring, Taliya Venn." Garrett's blood went cold. "Harboring? She's a guest in my home. There's no law against offering someone shelter. There are regulations about undocumented aliens residing on the station without proper visas or financial guarantees," the shorter official said, consulting his tablet. Miss Venn's entry documentation was tied to Joran Thrace's business visa, which has since been revoked. She has no independent authorization to remain on Frontier Station. Taliya appeared in the hallway behind Garrett, Riley clutching her hand protectively. "What's happening?" "They're saying you need documentation to stay," Garrett said, his voice tight with anger. "Miss Venn will need you to come with us to processing. We'll arrange transport back to Valente space or to a refugee processing center on Centauri Prime." "She's not going anywhere," Riley said fiercely. "She lives here now, with us." The taller official's expression softened slightly. "I understand, you formed attachments, but the law is clear. Without proper authorization, or a sponsor willing to post financial guarantees." "How much?" Garrett interrupted. "Excuse me?" "The financial guarantee. How much?" The official consulted his tablet. "For a Valente national, given the political sensitivities and medical needs, we're looking at approximately 50,000 credits as surety against station resources." The number hit like a physical blow. Garrett had maybe 8,000 in savings, money he'd been carefully accumulating for Riley's education. Owen probably had another 2,000. It wasn't nearly enough. "There has to be another way," he said. "Marriage," the shorter official said. "If Miss Venn married a station citizen, she'd gain automatic residency rights. But given her situation, I doubt I'll marry her." Everyone in the hallway froze. Taliya's head whipped toward Garrett. "What? I'll marry her," Garrett repeated, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Today, right now, whatever it takes. That solves the legal problem, doesn't it?" The officials exchanged glances. "It would, yes, but nothing. Draw up whatever paperwork is required. We'll sign it." After the officials left, promising to return with the necessary documents, Taliya pulled Garrett into the small kitchen, her expression unreadable. "You can't do this," she said. "You can't marry me just to solve a legal problem. Why not?" "Because marriage is supposed to mean something. Because you can't tie yourself to me out of obligation, or pity, or—" Garrett took her hands gently. "Taliya, look at me. Or, well, sense me, read my emotions. Tell me what you feel." She was quiet, her bioluminescence flickering as she focused on him. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Determination, protectiveness, affection. Something deeper. Something that feels like love, Garrett finished. "It's love. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's unconventional. Maybe I'm an idiot for falling for someone I've known for 3 weeks. But I'm not proposing out of obligation.
I'm proposing because I want you to stay. Because the thought of you leaving, of never hearing your voice in the morning, or your laugh when Owen makes terrible jokes, that thought is unbearable. Tears tracked down Taliya's face, her fingers tightening around his. I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid it was too fast, afraid I was just clinging to the first person who showed me kindness after Joran's betrayal. But it's real. When I sense your emotional signature, it's like coming home. Then marry me, not for paperwork, not for legal convenience. Marry me because we want to build something together. Yes, Taliya breathed. Yes. Riley's whoop of joy from the hallway suggested she'd been eavesdropping shamelessly. The ceremony was small, conducted in the station's administrative office, with Owen and Riley as witnesses. The officiating clerk seemed bemused by the unconventional circumstances, but processed the paperwork efficiently. When it came time for the vows, Garrett squeezed Taliya's hands and spoke from his heart. I promise to describe sunsets to you, to be your eyes when you need them and your anchor when you don't. I promise to love Riley as fiercely as you already do, and to build a family that's strange and imperfect and absolutely ours. Taliya's voice was steady despite her tears. I promise to sense your emotions when words fail, to share your burdens and your joys equally. I promise to be Riley's second mother, not replacing what she lost but adding to what she has. I promise to love you with everything I am. Electromagnetic perception or not. When the clerk pronounced them married, Riley tackled them both in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked them over. The following weeks brought adjustments. Taliya's medical situation required ongoing treatment that was expensive and complex. Garrett picked up extra shifts, but it was Taliya herself who found a solution. Her empathic abilities, even diminished, made her an exceptional mediator. The station's conflict resolution office hired her to help settle disputes between different species and cultural groups. I may be blind, she told Garrett after her first successful mediation, but I can still sense when someone's lying or when their emotional state doesn't match their words. Apparently that's incredibly valuable. Riley thrived with Taliya in her life, soaking up stories about Valente culture and teaching Taliya about human customs with equal enthusiasm. Owen joked that he'd been demoted from favorite uncle to distant third in Riley's affections, but his genuine happiness for his brother was evident. 6 months after their marriage, Garrett found Taliya on their apartment's small balcony. Face turned toward the viewport, showing the stars beyond the station. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I was thinking about how much has changed. 6 months ago, I was alone in the rain, blind and abandoned, convinced my life was over. Now, I have a family, meaningful work, a home. I have you." Garrett kissed her temple. "I was thinking something similar. 4 years after losing my wife, I'd convinced myself that chapter of my life was closed, that I'd focus on Riley and work, and that would be enough. Then you came along and reminded me that closing one chapter doesn't mean the story's over." Taliya turned in his arms, her hands finding his face with the intimacy of long practice. "I love you, Garrett Stone. Thank you for stopping in the rain. Thank you for seeing someone worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. Always," he promised, and kissed her as the stars watched through the viewport, ancient and patient, witnesses to a love that had begun in abandonment and grown into something that transcended species, circumstance, and every expectation either of them had held. Riley appeared in the doorway. "Are you two being mushy again? Because dinner's ready and Uncle Owen made his questionable casserole, and we should probably eat it before it achieves sentience." They laughed, breaking apart but keeping their hands linked as they followed Riley inside. Their family, strange and imperfect and absolutely theirs, gathered around a too-small table in a too-small apartment on a frontier station at the edge of explored space. It wasn't the life any of them had planned. It was infinitely better. Later that night, after Riley had gone to bed and Owen had retreated to his room, Garrett and Taliya stood together at the viewport. Below them, the station breathed with the lives of thousands, each person carrying their own stories of loss and hope, ending and beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" Taliya asked softly. "Taking me in, marrying me, all the complications I've brought into your life?" Garrett pulled her closer, feeling her heart beat against his chest, her bioluminescence creating soft patterns of light against his skin. "Not for a single second. You didn't complicate my life, Taliya. You completed it." She smiled, that beautiful smile that had become as familiar as breathing, and together they watched the stars, no longer lost or abandoned or alone, but found, chosen, and finally, truly home.